The year is coming to a close and it is kind of the time of reflection. And one of those reflections I just tried to make was to kind of figure out what are the products that I really enjoyed this year? What are the things that I upgraded my gear with, my life with, that I really enjoy and I can maybe even recommend to you out there? Some of these products I have already reviewed on this channel. I made videos about them because I already thought that they were really valuable at the time. But now, after some of these have been in use for almost a year at this point, or basically all of 2020, I wanted to give you an overview of those things. But I will also include something that I thought would change something drastically, but in the end didn't quite do so. Now, most of those things are tech related and have been basically in use for my YouTube creations and just upgrading my whole studio here. So it is easier for me to create videos, make live conference calls and such kind of things. I always am on a path to really looking for ways on how I can make my life easier, but at the same time also increasing the quality that you as a viewer see out there. But this is actually not something that is only interesting for this channel and for you as a viewer. It's also interesting to my clients because I am also a consultant, and there, with upgrading my equipment, getting to know new pieces of equipment, I can be of better help to the people that want to know, for example, in terms of their podcasting setup, how they might be able to increase their quality and or make their workflow easier. Now, I'm going to just go down this list. It's not necessarily ordered in any particular order in terms of what I liked most or not. The first item that I want to talk about is the Atomos Ninja V. Right now, it is being used down below of my camera, and it is a monitor as well as recorder to SSDs. The main reason I purchased this in the beginning of 2020 was because I wanted to start utilizing the ProRes that this monitor produces and also be able to record for more than 30 minutes. And both of those goals are still met by this recorder slash monitor, and I'm super happy that I invested into this piece of gear because it now has given me the opportunity to do longer takes without worrying about the camera shutting off at some point in between or stopping the recording at 30 minutes. Now, I am also aware that there are cameras that just don't have this 30-minute limit anymore. And especially this year with the A7S III, that one is a beast of a video camera, and it also does not have that 30-minute record time limit. However, I am on the Canon EOS R, and I'm most likely going to stick with the Canon ecosystem for the foreseeable future, and thus the Atomos actually gave me a little bit of an edge over what was possible before. Now, I also have played around with working with 4K with the Canon EOS R and the 10-bit mode. However, I am not necessarily keen on that at this time, mostly because of the sheer file size of 4K and that I would actually need to invest in much more storage to be able to actually archive the footage that I am creating in this talking head situation here, but also to be able to work off those SSDs and potentially keep multiple projects for at least a couple of months after the videos have been published, which already was an issue once where I already had deleted those original files, but I needed to make a change there. And at least a couple of months worth of projects would be really nice to be able to keep that up. Another thing is, of course, the ability to see what is going on behind the camera. Now, the Canon EOS R has a flip screen, but it's relatively small. And with the Atomos, I am able to bring the monitor much closer to where I'm sitting so that I can actually see it. And of course, record to SSD storage units, which basically just is a cheaper way to store things rather than storing things on these tiny little SD cards, which are sort of expensive. Also, one of the big benefits that I see in this recorder is the ProRes, and that is something that is going to be amazing for me even if I end up changing the camera, even if I were to use the Sony a7S III, for example. Having ProRes or DNxHR, if you want to use that, is a game changer in the editing process. I found that even editing 4K in ProRes is really not a problem for this computer, except for using color effects and something like that. But if I just use the editing with the ProRes, it's no problem whatsoever. And that's a whole different story if I just use the file that the camera would record internally, because that H.264 file is just not really made for editing and I would have to transcode it. With this monitor, I can just record it in ProRes from the start, and that gives me a really nice file to work with. Now, this wasn't just the monitor that I had to invest in. I also bought a hard drive, which is a 500 gigabyte Western Digital drive. Also, the HDMI cords were necessary. And I also had to get a USB-C to SATA adapter so that I can plug the SSD straight into my computer. And to be able to use this whole setup even when I'm walking around outside, I also got some NPF style batteries and a dual charger for this setup so that the monitor can also be powered by those batteries. Now, this was an absolute game changer this year, and I'm super happy that I made this investment, and I can definitely recommend anyone in the video industry to look into something like this. An external recorder, and especially the Atomos Ninja V is the one that I am using, and I really like it. And something to note also is that Atomos is constantly pushing new updates, as well as camera manufacturers who are constantly adding new features to their cameras or also releasing new cameras. And the Atomos always brings an amazing quality with that. And there are also a ton of cameras now that also support ProRes RAW, which the Atomos Ninja V can also record, I think up to 30 frames a second in 4K, maybe even 60, but I'm not positive on that since I don't have the ability to use that in this studio with the Canon EOS R, which tops out at 4K 30 FPS. Now, the second purchase I made early in 2020 was the Canon RF 1.8 macro lens, and I've made a comparison video comparing the RF 35mm 1.8 to the 24-105 f4 L series lens, and that video will be linked in the description below. One of the main reasons I got this lens was that with the 24-105, even at 35mm, for example, using that would only give me an aperture of 4.0 as the maximum opening, and thus the background wouldn't be as blurry as it is with this lens. The 35mm 1.8, on the other hand, is a relatively cheap lens. You can get it for about $500 or euros, something around that ballpark. And it just gives you an opportunity to have something that, for example, a 24-105 cannot give you. Now, if at the time I would have had the money to get the 15-35 f2.8 lens, I might have not made that investment to get the 35 1.8 macro. However, I still think that the 35 f1.8 macro is an amazing tool to upgrade your EOS R or EOS RP or R6 equipment, because it gives you that ability to have a shallow depth of field and as well have the ability to really go in close into almost macro areas, which helps by just making any kind of showcases. And for me, when I do those detailed shots of products, for example, to show something very specifically, that always helps a lot. Now, those two investments of the Atomos Ninja V and the Canon RF 35 f1.8 were about the visuals of my video creation. But just a couple of months ago now, I also upgraded the audio that I am using in this setup. First off, I purchased the Zoom F6 mainly for use in podcast recording, because previously to that, I only had the Zoom H5. And comparing those two, it's like day and night. The F6 has such an amazingly low noise floor, and of course it has the 32-bit floating point audio recording, which gives you a whole new realm of audio possibilities in post-processing. To go with that, I now also am using the Oktava MK012, and I have made a whole series of videos about different pencil type microphones, all the way from about $20 to $250 or $280 for this one right here. And that was a really interesting series to look into different price points of this type of microphone, and also how you can use something like this indoors like I am using it here. With that, I also upgraded in my room here the wall kind of like situation behind the camera, basically to the side here, which you can also see in a video linked in the description below, which basically shows you how different microphones sound in a room like this, which is about 20 square meters, with and without a little bit of sound treatment, even though it's far from perfect. Now, these two investments of the Zoom F6 and the Oktava MK012, I'm really happy with, because it gave me something that I wasn't necessarily too concerned about before investing into this equipment. I already was using the Video Mic NTG for a couple of months before 2020 came, but now with this, I'm a little bit more happy, I would say. And with that, I hope that also you can notice that difference to previous videos on my channel to now, how there is a certain step up into that quality realm, and not only upgrading the visuals that you can see, but also working with the audio so that my voice is clear and very understandable. In this realm of video equipment, I also want to give a kind of like quick mention to a teleprompter that I'm using, which I will link in the description below because I just have forgotten the name of it. But basically, I have a Feelworld T7 monitor below the teleprompter, and then I have a little bit of a teleprompter situation right in front of me. And right now, I'm using that to basically see myself and film myself at the same time. But it is really easy to point at things when you are able to see yourself right in front of you whilst you are filming. And that's something that's really cool. And I will also make a video specifically about the whole setup that I have created there, which monitor I'm using, which teleprompter I'm using, why I'm using those things, and how they work. But for now, I just want to give a quick mention of this because it's also something that is very new. And since my camera broke, I wasn't really able to fully test it yet. And so I'm not quite done there. So that's going to be something in an upcoming video. However, one more tech thing that actually feels like changed my life completely right now is a double USB-C dock. Now, for MacBooks, it can be kind of tricky to try to hook up multiple monitors as well as Ethernet cables and hard drives all at once. The MacBook that I'm using has 4 Thunderbolt ports, which are also USB-C ports. However, with my previous setup, I always had 3 of them already in use, which was one of them for charging with a 100-watt plug. Then I had a display port adapter kind of situation going on for my ultra-wide monitor. And then I also had a Ethernet adapter for the USB-C to Ethernet cable. Now with the teleprompter now, I wanted to be able to also have a third monitor, so the internal monitor, the ultra-wide monitor, and the teleprompter hooked up to that, with also a capture card, SSD, as well as the Ethernet connection, and have power all throughout the system. This specific adapter will also be featured in an upcoming video, but I wanted to mention it because it literally changed my life here, because now I can just plug my computer into, it does take 2 USB-C adapters, so it just plugs into one of the sides of the MacBook, but the other 2 are completely free, and it has a host of connections, which absolutely changed everything for my desk, because now I can charge, have Ethernet, and multiple monitors connected to my computer, all with just 2 USB-C ports being plugged in, basically. So that's something that you will also find linked in the description below. It's really incredible that this is possible, and I have heard that it might be possible with a Thunderbolt 3 or something like that dock. However, those run you about 150 to 250 US dollars or euros, and this dock in comparison only cost about 45 euros. And I think in the US I've seen it for about 60 US dollars, which is kind of mind-blowing to me that you could get that. But it was a little harder to find because most of those docks don't necessarily support 2 or more monitors, but instead they only let you mirror the image onto 2 monitors instead of actually running them as separate monitors, which I had to have in a feature like this to be able to use the teleprompter completely separate from the ultrawide. And one last mention that I want to make here is Pu-Erh Tea, which I got a couple of months ago, maybe sometime around June, July, around that corner. And I actually got a Pu-Erh Tea as well as some Sencha green tea and turmeric ginger tea. And I have watched a couple of videos, and I think first I heard of this with Tim Ferriss, and then also he wrote about it in the 4-Hour Body or 4-Hour Chef book, something like that, that this is a really good tea to boost mental abilities as well as help with weight loss and such things. And I really like the taste of it, especially in this mixture of these 3 teas combined. For the reason behind it, apparently it's about the green tea basically giving you that immediate boost in caffeine, and then you have the Pu-Erh tea, which kind of kicks in after an hour or so, and the ginger as well as turmeric, those are just also very healthy teas, and of course they help with making it a more interesting taste, because the Pu-Erh tea can have a bit of a earthy tone to it. So that's something that's completely non-tech related, but I thought I'd throw it in here because it really changed my routine, because before that I always was drinking a Darjeeling second flush tea, and now it basically just changed over to this. And also what I found really interesting is that I can basically brew the same leaf set twice, sometimes even 3 times, and it still tastes very, very well, and I really enjoy that. Now lastly, I have a couple honorable mentions here, which are a bit out of the ordinary for this list. And that starts with the Track E and the Sync E from Tentacle Sync. The reason why I'm throwing this at the end of this very video is because I didn't purchase these things in comparison to all the other things on this list, which I actually purchased with my own money and invested in those pieces of equipment. But the Track E's and the Sync E were provided by Tentacle Sync. However, what I want to say here is that it absolutely has been a game changer to be able to use the Zoom F6's timecode syncing with the Sync E devices, to also use it with the Canon EOS R and of course the Tentacle Sync Studio on my computer, to then bring all of those files together, and easy as that, just have everything synchronized. That has been an absolute game changer. No more need for the audio synchronization, lining up visual forms, or using the features in Premiere Pro to do that with the audio waveform automatic alignment thing, which sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. So that's definitely something that has been a game changer. But as I mentioned before, I didn't purchase these myself. But for all I have used them right now, and of course with COVID right now, it's not as easy to just go out and about and do some crazy things. I really think that the Sync E's are absolute game changers, and the Track E's are a really interesting device with a 32-bit floating point audio recorder built in. And also the timecode sync abilities of the Sync E. That also is something that I think will be an absolute cool thing to have, especially for example, interview situations and of course podcast situations, where this just gives you the ability to have a backup recording for those other microphones that you might also use. But not just that, also the ability to just hook this up to a lavalier, have it on your Kolar, and then put it into your pocket, film with the Rec app on your iPhone or with a Sync E activated camera, and you just sync those things up in post-processing. Absolute game changer, timecode syncing. I will make more videos about this topic because it is really, really cool. And also I will share a way of how you can actually use timecode syncing with the Zoom F6 just by hooking it up to your camera with a cable. So that's also going to be something, and basically for free if you are using that type of equipment already. And now for my absolute last point, and what I mentioned before, the piece of equipment that I thought would change a lot for me, and it basically hasn't. And that's this one right here. This is the Ohm 4 from DJI, and it basically is a phone stabilizer or a phone gimbal. And now with the new one, you have this little attachment clamp, with which you can attach your phone to the gimbal like so, and then this stabilizes your footage. And what I thought when I purchased this to begin with was that this would be an absolute game changer for being able to have moving shots and where maybe I don't want to bring my camera. Now, I'm not sure if this was just not the case with COVID, but for now, at least, I really haven't found much use for this. I recently had the experience of using my phone for my in-studio work because of the Canon EOS R breaking and now having a replacement for that. And even then, I didn't really start using this at all because right now I'm just not outside much at all. I don't think that this is a bad piece of equipment. I do think that I personally am really spoiled by using the Canon EOS R and a full frame camera, and maybe I just have to actually invest into a full-sized gimbal for the use on when I go outside for travels and similar things. However, I do really like how small and compact this is when you just pull it together like this, and you just can bring it anywhere you want. And this way you can have those shots when you are traveling, when you're hiking or something, and still have those stabilized shots on your phone without bringing that much extra gear. So I still think that this is a really marvelous device. I just was expecting much more, that it would have a bigger impact on me, my creations and such. And I can't really say that up to this point. So that's my experience with this device right here. Let me know in the comments down below if you have had a different experience, if it really changed your life. I have seen people comment on my video where I compared the Ohm 3 with the Ohm 4, and they were asking about short movies made with this and stuff like that. And I do actually think that this is an absolute game changer for you if you, for example, are in university and you want to make a short movie with your phone, or if you want to just start out with your phone and work that way, or if you are traveling backpack style and you just want to keep the weights down. This can be really, really cool. I just haven't found a use for it in that way. Now, with all that said, I would love to hear your comments and thoughts about these different pieces of equipment. Do you use those yourself? When have you invested in those things? And maybe what are things that I might want to look into to also improve the equipment around here, improve my creations here, and such things. Of course, you can also check out those videos that I will link in the description below about these different items that I have here. And I will also link the store links to Amazon so that you can check them out for yourself and maybe purchase them for you or for a loved one. Now, overall, I think this year has been incredible for the tech industry in terms of new releases like the R5, as well as in other areas with Apple and the M1 chip and such things. But for now, I am not ready to invest in those things because I am using what I have here, but I'm not sure how long I will be able to hold out on those investments either, because the changes that are coming with these new pieces are incredible. And seeing how others have already started utilizing something like the M1 Mac Mini in their video editing or even just the transcoding is just an absolute game changer. And I think that that's definitely an interesting direction to go into, and something that I'm looking forward to seeing the 16-inch M1 or M2X or something that is going to be released later the next year, most likely. The other thing that I would really love to look into is a storage solution for my video creations. As I mentioned, I would love to continue creating in 4K. However, the two bottlenecks that I have right now are the Canon EOS R crop factor and, of course, the computer storage and hard drive storage in general. And there it would be really interesting to invest into some type of a RAID solution, of a network attached storage or Thunderbolt storage solution with multiple drives in it. But of course, it also has to be speedy enough for video editing. So even just a 2 terabyte SSD would be interesting. However, right now, not the time, maybe early next year, as we will see, especially seeing how the channel will develop and how I might be able to invest further into this line of my work. Now, if this video was interesting to you, I would appreciate a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, as well as for me to know what type of videos you like the best on this channel. If you haven't already, subscribe so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. And if you want to, just check out some other videos that I have already released and you might find interesting. There will be some on the screen right here after the video. If you have questions, thoughts, comments, or anything like that, leave those in the comment section down below and I will make sure to either answer you there or make a video about that specifically. And with all that said, I hope you have an amazing end of 2020 and I will see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.